The more you hold on to that, the more resistance you're going to get. Just let it go. Just because there's nothing you can do about it.
It feels
There's
so
nothing.
good to be spiteful, though, Amy. It feels so good.
Let's now give it loud for Anthony Eugenio. We're going to have a next time. Very funny. Wayne Russell, everybody.
Welcome to the Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne. Wayne's got some kind of shit going on, so I'm going to be hosting solo for a while here, and we got a really special guest edition. We've been talking about it all week because we have on the fantastic Amy T. How you doing, Amy?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries. Yeah, we obviously you're. I mean, I don't want to say legendary and piss you off because that's a hell of a word to say, but in this area, you know, obviously every open mic we went to, I would say once, I don't know, every 2 weeks someone brought you up saying, like, that's the show we got to go see, and either off Cabot that you play at a lot and any of those things. So, again, thank you for coming on.
Oh, that's really sweet. That's awesome.
So what we want to talk about, like, so a lot of the time we started this podcast because we're like, we want to get really successful comedians to talk about, like, their open mic stage and how they got to the next level. And then we started just talking to open micers and our friends, and we were like, well, we're just going to talk about now, it sounds like. So very excited to be able to ask somebody that's been in the game for such a long time. What was the beginning process like for you? What got you into it, and where'd you get your start?
For me, it was like, you know, crossing it off a bucket list. And I had a friend of mine, I had taken an improv class and met this woman, her name was Esther. And she was like, Amy, I think you would be great at stand-up. She's like, and there was a stand-up comedy class at Northern Essex Community College in Haverhill. And she's like, I think you'd be great at it. And because she was doing it, I signed up with her. Dave Radigan, I'm sure you've met Dave, was my instructor. And, you know, 6-7 weeks later, going every week, writing your stuff. Then you have your final exam, which is the big show in front of all your friends. And the minute I took stage and got that first laugh, I was hooked. It was just like an adrenaline. It felt like the world, the universe opened up, like angels sang. There was rainbows, glitter, confetti. Like, I just knew that I felt alive that day. Like, I just knew, I'm like, I'm supposed to be doing this. And then ever since then, I just been grinding. And did the open mics, you know, Wednesday night to Thursday night, 9 o'clock, like and you travel everywhere to go, right? Anywhere you can find an open mic that'll put you on, you go. And it's an expensive hobby at the beginning, that's for sure. Between gas and, you know, drinks and food and all that stuff. But you meet a really unique, like, crew of people that you otherwise probably wouldn't have come across. And yeah, so here I am 21 years later, you know, headlining throughout New England, and, you know, have changed my act and my persona over the years. I always have my pre-sobriety and post-sobriety humor. I got sober 14 years ago, and my pre-sobriety humor was pretty crass, and you know, it got me a lot of work. And I did a DVD called Laughing Matters Next Gen. It was like 5 of the up-and-coming LGBTQ comics across the country, and we filmed a documentary, and I got to travel the country to different film festivals and stuff. But it was definitely very different humor. And I was single at the time, going through a divorce, so I was talking a lot about that. And then post sobriety has been just talking about mental health and substance use and that kind of stuff, to kind of like raise awareness a little bit about some stigma in that genre.
Well, so that, not to interject, but a quick question I would have in that is, me and Wayne have been doing comedy. We started the same week, and it's been about a year and 3 months. So, you know, very, very, very new to it. To me, to think about changing your persona would be like, how the heck? So you were about 7 years in when you got your sobriety and you switched topics to it. Was it extremely nerve-wracking to be like, do I even have comedy anymore? Did you have that thought, like, am I a comedian without that? Or did you know there's other things to talk about?
I think it was a natural evolution. I just knew that, like, once I got sober, I wasn't like this character that I had created. Like, I needed, you know, alcohol to kind of like function, not on stage, but like afterwards, like the social aspect and interactions with people. I needed that. And then I mean, it just created a caricature of Amy T. And then when I got sober, it was very humbling of like, oh, it just stripped me of like what I once, I had a new normal. And now going through a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis and substance use, now like I have this to write about. But it was very scary at the beginning because I literally had to strip away all the old material because it just didn't fit anymore. It didn't fit me as a person. And so it was like starting from square one, to be honest with you, without the same nerves in the same way. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder if even no matter how long that takes in time as a comedian, if that feels like the really becoming a true comedian. What I mean by that is like Seinfeld did comedy forever, the same hour that he did, and then he dropped it and he did the whole documentary about having to start again. And it almost felt like that was like his renaissance to come back. Locally, Mike Katrobis, I don't know, I'm sure you know Mike Katrobis.
Of course.
He just filmed his first comedy special and has to restart now of getting all his stuff together. And I think same way he's really getting excited about it again. And I wonder if that's a little bit freeing. I'm sure it is to like when you have that material. I'm sure at 7 years you had an hour that you were really probably crushing pretty good. And to start again must feel like open micing again.
It definitely was a lot of trial and error of the new material. Right, it's just like you got to try out the new material and stuff, and get comfortable in a new skin of sobriety, mental health, and what I did, I became a better comic. I would say for sure, because I think my writing is much better. I'm a kinder, more gentler human being. So like when I first got sober and was rewriting, you know, you'd watch the tapes and be like, all right, what can I pull back? And then I would just like I have a little studio down in my garage, and I'd sit down there and I would just bawl watching. Like, I'm like, I don't even know who this person is. Like, you know, like some of the stuff that I was like writing about was just heinous. And so it was humbling, very, very humbling to watch some of that old stuff. And yeah, it worked. It worked for many years. You know, I did many summers in P-Town with that hour that did well. And, but yeah, rediscovering yourself is exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. Change is hard.
Yeah, it sure is. And then back in the beginning, you were talking about taking the class, and so I've noticed that there seems to be the two ways in when you start off in comedy. So our way was we just randomly found an open mic and bombed our asses off for a long time, especially the first time, really bad, and we just had to figure it out from scratch. And we've interviewed a couple people now, probably like 5 or 6, who said that they started with a class. And man, does that sound like a way better way to start, because you get all of them usually have a great showcase at the end of it. I'm sure you get good tips in the beginning. Meeting, you know, Dave Radigan's a great guy. I'm sure, you know, he had good tips. I couldn't imagine him 21 years ago. Did he have hair?
His brain was better 21 years ago, but still funny as hell, right? He's pretty scattered now. Yeah, I think the class definitely helped because it also, like, you know, you had structured writer time and you had like homework assignments. So you had like, you know, 1 week to tighten this up and bring it back to the class. You know, by week 3, 4, 5, we're all, you know, I think there was 8 or 9 of us in my class, and now we're all sick of each other's punchlines, right? Like, because we know they're coming. Yeah. But then like that night of the showcase where all your friends, you're never going to have a show like that ever again, because it's just the stars aligned. Everybody's there to support you, regardless of how good you are or not. And so I highly recommend it because it gives you, there will be some tips and give you some pointers in writing. They'll give you some etiquette. I do notice like sometimes like people just don't have like regular, you know, comedy etiquette, like moving the mic stand. That one cracks me up. Like when people they leave the mic, you know, they walk away and the mic stand just stays there. Like it's just such a simple thing, but you have to get in the habit of doing it.
It's true. I love the people that take the mic out and stand in front of the mic stand. They don't even move. So it's just in their belly button.
Right. And and that's like a tip that you're like, you don't even realize until you do it. And then I taught stand up at North Shore Community College for several years, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun, but I was like I'm a hard ass because I've seen a lot of comedy, so it's like that joke isn't new, that premise isn't new, or whatever. But I held like, if you're gonna, don't waste my time, do the homework assignment, that kind of thing. So I was a hard ass at doing it, but it makes people right, because you think like a lot of times like people would come into the class and it's like, oh, somebody told them they were funny at a barbecue or they're at work and like, oh, you should do stand up. And then when you go and do it, it's not as easy as you think. Like, you're not going to make $1 million your first round out there. And it's humbling. It's humbling. Yeah, you might be able to crack jokes in the break room at work, but trying to do it for 5 solid minutes is a different beast. And being tight, right? Being able to have a tight joke.
It's almost my favorite thing, I would say, almost in the world, is finding something new to do where you can get that humbling experience in it. Like I started jujitsu when I first did that. I was a wrestler, and I'm like, I'm going to go in there, and like if anybody's anywhere in my ballpark, I think I'm going to have an advantage on them. And then to immediately realize that you're a baby and drowning in water for about years in jujitsu, it's a great feeling because it is really like there's a lot to learn. And comedy, I felt the same way. The first time I grabbed a microphone on stage for comedy, the microphone cord fell out. And I picked it up and put it back in, and I did a dick joke into a vast field of silence. And I was like, well, okay, there's not... And, obviously your first joke you practice 1 million times in your car, and I'm like, well, there'll be applause break here. They're probably going to stop and stand up. And then you get nothing.
Where was your first open mic?
It was at a Free Street in Portland, Maine. They have, it's called Field Notes. They do on Sundays. It's a real nice stage that they do rock concerts in. It's got lights. It was really the best I could have asked for environment the first time, like of walking a stage and doing all that. And I was a musician, so I was really comfortable on a stage, using microphones, all that stuff. But comedy is almost like music, and you have to learn the instrument of it. I would think that there's timing and rhythm, and you can say a joke. Like if I said a Dane Cook joke outside of his rhythm, I don't know if I can get anybody ever to laugh at it. But when you get on his timing, in his rhythm, on his ambiance, when he hit it, it was about as funny as you can hit it, right? So a lot of that I think goes into it. But real quick, Wayne, you're in. What's up, buddy?
I'm back.
Hey,
Thank you for starting without me. I wanted to jump in real quick. You mentioned about teaching classes, and I had this weird, like, That's So Raven moment where when I was preparing for today, I remembered back in July, so about a month after we started this podcast, we had Erin Feely on, and she brought you up with so many times with such great things to say, and
my pride and joy.
She was the one that brought my attention to you. Ever since she mentioned you, I started seeing you everywhere. I actually went back and listened to that episode while I was walking my dog, and I'm going to beg you, please don't, because Erin was great. We were horrific. We're still learning the ins and outs of doing this thing.
Great joker. I love Erin. She's one of the few people where a year ago I heard a joke that she had about a Brazilian wax thing. That's one of her closer, and I can still remember how funny it is to this day. And I can't do that for almost anybody. So definitely good job there.
Yeah, she's my pride and joy. She was a natural, right? Yep. She was a natural. She was already really funny. We just had to tighten up the writing, but she was a natural. And to watch her go out and just do her thing is like, last summer I did a show for her that she was putting on part of the Seacoast Comedy Festival. And like, I'm beaming. Like, I know where this one started. Like, yeah, it's incredible. Because not too many people from class stick with it, They might go out once or twice and they'll, do an open mic here and there and realize like, oh, this sucks.
It's a virus that you have to catch. If you catch it and it's on, it's almost like, I think sometimes now, like, how would I stop almost? Like, how would you stop doing it? Because you feel like there's no way to not keep going when you get to a certain point. But I'm sure that in class it must be daunting when you see, especially like someone like you. I'm sure you host a showcase at the end when you're doing the classes and putting some time up, and I felt sometimes when I first started watching, like Casey Crawford, I saw him really early on when I started and saw his jokes. And I was like, why the hell am I even doing this? This is crazy. My brain would never come up with that.
It's so funny. Yeah, it is. It's like, I created, it's my drug of choice. Like I need it, right? The microphone, the stage, the spotlight. It's everything. It's the adrenaline, all of it.
Now, since you were teaching, would you teach people that they like if you wanted to write a premise, would you teach a person to sit down and try to mine the premise out of the air, or do you subscribe to the premise needs to, like, the idea needs to hit you randomly and then you got to mine off of that? Like, what would you say for writing in that regard?
I think, like, go with how your brain works, right? Mm-hmm. Like some people, like a George Carlin used to just throw like premises in a drawer, right? And then just pull one out every week. And then every year you had a brand new hour. You know, you have like a stapler or something, and you write, 5 minutes on that stapler. For me, it's like I'll, maybe something funny happens with my wife or something, and then I just keep teasing it and teasing it and teasing it. So the same thing, like a lot of times students would come in with ideas and, all right, let's workshop it until it's blue in the face, or we'll make it funny, or I have this idea that I think should be funny. Okay, let's figure out how it's funny. Yeah,
that's really the key to us now that we're trying to figure out, right, Wayne?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of your videos, over the last year since or so, and I gotta say, one thing I used to ask this question all the time, and you kind of touch upon it on one of your jokes. You were talking about your wife going to one of your shows and hearing a lot of your jokes that she had never heard before, and on the car ride home giving you a bunch of shit about why do you have to put all our dirty laundry out there, not to give up your joke, but basically that whole interaction. And I always used to ask everybody, does your spouse think you're funny? And I'm really curious about that with you, because that joke almost seems like, sure, it could be funny, but for her, when it hits personally, is it different, for...
She's really a good sport. Like most of my act right now, I would say 80% is about my marriage and different stuff. And she's really a good sport about what I talk about. So yes, I do think she thinks I'm funny. She doesn't come to a lot of shows, so that when she does come, like I might surprise her with a new joke or something. So she does. She's a good sport about that kind of stuff. I am also very mindful of, I would never put out on anything on stage that would upset her, right? That I wouldn't want her to hear. The part of that joke is that so that, like, yes, she's like sort of bitching at me. It's not that she doesn't know that these jokes are out there. I would never do anything that would be disrespectful or catch her off guard. So there's a mutual respect there of like what I know I can get away with.
I kind of take that idea with me every time I write a joke that could potentially involve somebody, whether I know them or not. Just that if I'm not willing to say it with them in the room, then I shouldn't be saying it at all.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a complicated relationship with that in the beginning when I first started writing, because my first perspective was like, when I would talk to my wife about it, I'd be like, listen, this is a character talking about a version of you that's in an alternate universe that isn't even you. It's just to tell a story about a joke that I have. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know, there's no moral thing wrong with that. Nobody should be offended. And you realize, like, well, you're talking about people. So there's always going to be hinges of truth in your jokes or things that you said that even though you tell her, like, I'm just kidding, it's hard to keep the personal use out of it. So I completely can see at some point you're like, I just got to think about, make sure that you, like Wayne said, that it'd be something that she'd be happy to hear in life or on a stage.
I think one of the earliest jokes I wrote was when I found out a friend of mine came over my house and used my bathroom and didn't wash their hands. And like, I didn't know how to, and this is like long before COVID. So we're going back like 15, 18 years ago, I wrote this joke, and I still sometimes will use it as an opener. And it's like, without being mean to the person directly, like, what the fuck, dude, you're touching my shit. I made it into a joke and got people as a larger audience surrounding me in unison. And then hopefully, like, without pointing right directly at you. So I haven't done that. Where I've drawn attention, but not called you out by name.
I like that.
That's the fun part of this, is being able to take small things like that and really put it out there in like a ridiculous way, or a more maybe meaningful way to you, as opposed to just like saying to your wife, like, hey, like, she didn't fucking wash her hands. That's gross. You can really sit with that and like stew on it and make it something really creative.
Yeah, that's really good
one of
writing, though. Like, I feel like sometimes in my jokes, I'm like I have a joke about the equity of assholes of people that in prison have, and how they have no idea how to like track it and sell it and all that kind of stuff. And it's a whole thing that's so stupidly intricate and dumb. My favorite jokes are people that could take a simple topic and extract an angle that you couldn't get out of it. Like, we've all seen people that haven't washed their hands before, but as a stand-up, I'm never like, that's a premise that I can mine and think about it. I'm always thinking about like aliens or the moon or wherever I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I had an idea like that, but just the opposite, where I was in the bathroom and I always wash my hands to what I feel very well. But I was washing my hands and this guy came up next to me and he washed his hands like he was trying to win a medal. So from there, I was like, holy shit, man, like, I got to keep going. So I made it like this thing in my head where I was just like, I'm not stopping until he stops. And he went for so long.
Yeah, there's something there. There you go.
You start singing the star. What is it like? I think you're supposed to do "Happy Birthday," right? For as long as so you could have just done the Star Spangled Banner, Stairway to Heaven,
or Free Bird.
You just keep going, yeah.
Free Bird, exactly.
So I've seen what you've been doing. You have a lot out there on YouTube and stuff. Different like different 5-minute sets out there with what's his Campbell's Comedy Hour. I think.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You do a lot of stuff like that, huh?
Yeah, those easy way of people have their own little, seem like a podcast, or they have their own local access TV show. So you go on and you do a little 5-7 minute set and get to talk about whatever's going on in the time. A lot of times I do a lot of stuff around mental health and substance use. So that becomes like the focal point of the interview, and then, the comedy to match.
I do want to touch on that. But before that, so I guess the follow-up question to that is, we were talking, are you familiar with Dobie Maxwell? Do you know him at all? He's a comedian from Chicago, Dobie Maxwell.
The name sounds really familiar.
So he has a Facebook group called the Maxwell Method of Comedy. We've talked to him a little bit, and I just recently did my first 15-minute set back in was it March, I think it was, or April, and and he had said to me, we had him on right before that happened. He said, nobody's ever ready for that next step, whether it's your first time on stage, your first 10-minute set, your first 15-minute set, your first feature spot, hosting, whatever. You're not ready ever. You just kind of do it. But I feel like, how was the first time stepping in front of a camera? Like, that has to have a whole different feeling of like nerves, going up in front of a crowd that they're not recording you. It's like, okay, that can be forgotten easily, but that I would have that feeling like, oh shit, like this is forever.
I feel like those audiences that go in studio audiences go and support that kind of thing are there to have a good time and to make the show successful. So even if you're not, maybe not on your game, they're there to like make sure that you're on your game.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So experimental comedy therapy, do you on your shows, which everybody should check out your website, it's experimentalcomedy.com?
Experimentalcomedy.com or Amy T. Comedian will take you to the same place.
Bang. So you put on shows yourself. Are those shows geared towards, is it just because your stand-up has some mental health things, or do your shows themselves tailor around that avenue of mental health awareness, stuff like that?
I can do both. I do a lot of work with the National Alliance of Mental Illness. So I can tailor my act that is completely all about my mental health and substance use, or we can just raise funds in that way, or as you guys are into the comedy scene now, you'll see that we're not a well group of people. So talking about it is helpful, and you can usually find a bunch of comedians that are also linked to something or one way or another, substance use or both, dual diagnosis, that will be happy to be a part of that. But the idea is also to like raise awareness and kind of like, let's talk about mental health, let's talk about substance use and reduce some of the stigma. For me, 14 years ago, I didn't know what bipolar disorder was. I didn't even have any idea. I'd heard it. I'd heard mental illness or whatever, but I didn't have the capacity of like, oh, now I am. And here I am 35 years old with a diagnosis. Like I've been walking around like my entire life like this, like, and I didn't know, or I could have gotten help sooner or whatever. So I really threw myself into trying to get involved in peer work and recovery work to help support other people that are on the same journey and minimize the struggle that can go along with it. The strength in numbers. So talking about it too. And for me at the beginning, when I started talking about it, like that's what was going on in my life. So it was almost therapy was to talk about it. And what I quickly recognized was the more I was talking about it on stage, the more people were coming up to me after from the audience going, thank you for talking about this. My daughter, my cousin, my this, my that. I have a family member. Like, I'm like, oh, wow. Like I'm backhandedly giving people an education through humor and talking about pretty taboo subjects that weren't very mainstream 15 years ago, and now it's becoming a lot more, and bringing it into a light that we can laugh about and not feel sorry for.
No, it's huge, because imagine a person in their early 20s going through something that they really can't figure out what it is, and they hear you talk about it and knowing that, like, because me, even now I'm 32, I couldn't imagine at 35 having something like that happen where you can finally get a word for the feelings that you had. But again, if someone was in their early 20s and they went to one of your shows, maybe they would get the help sooner, like you said, and find something in there. And that obviously is incredible, especially with comedy, because I feel like there is there's not a stigma there was a stigma to doing any kind of show that wasn't just a regular comedy show. I feel like not too long ago. And I feel like now there are so many different versions of that mental health awareness shows like you have. There are all kinds of stuff that are new types of shows that are popping up everywhere. I saw there was a show for disabilities 2 weeks ago where the comics would talk about their disabilities that they had. Maxwell Schultz put on a mental health show, or was on one a couple weeks ago. He's a friend of ours that's in the industry.
I love Max.
Yeah, Max is great.
He's a good guy.
So yeah, again, I just think it's incredible that you guys are. It feels like paving the way for that type of stuff, and huge for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good time for it to come out. When I was a kid, I remember people throwing words out there like schizophrenic and bipolar and all that, and it was like they're almost like digs at people, you know what I mean? It was like, everybody's growing up, going through puberty when mood swings and this and that. It's like, oh, what's wrong with Wayne today? Oh, he's bipolar. It was one of those words that was just thrown around all willy-nilly, and nobody ever really took it as like, oh, what is that though? Like,
right.
And I think it's probably good for, the times we're in now with the internet and how much visibility we can put on things like that. And then to throw comedy in there, which, most people love comedy. It's a good way to get it into people's heads, and kind of make people think a little bit.
Yeah, and reduce some of the shame too, right? Like when there's nothing, like it takes a lot to offend me. I get a pretty thick skin, but what drives me crazy is when people would be like, "Oh, the weather's being bipolar." Yeah. The weather is not like the mother nature's bipolar this week. Like it can't make up its mind. It's like, no, the weather's just being the weather. Your reaction to it is what's bipolar. You can't, that one drives me crazy is when like people will make that analogy because it's just not right.
And especially having, like, if you have someone that's close to you in your family who's been diagnosed with something like bipolar, you also hear a lot of people out there that's like, that guy's just acting bipolar today or something like that, like Wayne was saying. You're like, man, diagnosing somebody with something like that is like telling somebody that they have like a chronic disease without you being a doctor. Like it just doesn't make out there. But again, that's what I feel like that's what comedy does, is it removes the veil and shows people the truth in a digestible way for a lot of good things. So I think that's why it's essential in this case, at least. So what So we 7 years in, we go sober. We switch over to a new style of comedy. Since then, 14 years going strong, doing it. What do you think? Like, when was the what's the next thing that you want to do in your comedy career to push the ball forward? Like, what do you got going?
Next, I think I'm ready to tape my special. I don't know where it's going to go, what it's going to do. I just recently finished writing a sitcom with a friend of mine, and we submitted that, and we got some excellent feedback. So now we're back to making some adjustments and doing some rewrites. But that has got me pretty excited. I think I've always dreamed of starring in my own sitcom, and as I got older, I'm like, well, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I was like, well, the answer is no unless I try. So, we wrote our own. So that's got me excited of professionals thought it was great. I just need to just kind of tweak a few things. So that's coming up. And I recently quit my job last week to just fully focus on comedy and
Wow.
get better.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So yeah, really kind of it's time to take it to the next level. And, I was working 2 full-time jobs at one point that it was I was still doing comedy, but, the bandwidth to put towards comedy, put towards the writing, put towards the social media, that always just got put on the back burner. And I just have been kind of on autopilot for the last few years. So I'm kind of ready to take it to another next level up. And then I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm very happy with what I have now. My calendar's full. I enjoy doing it. I've surrounded myself with some amazing comedians that I enjoy performing with. So I'm very I'm picky about that too, of who I perform with and that kind of thing. So I like my energy to stay good. I like
Sure.
and clean and stay out of the drama.
How was it working a full-time job and being such a prominent comic in the area?
It was busy.
What's that?
Right?
It was busy. It was very busy.
How did you co-work? So we've been doing comedy about 16, 17 months now, and I talk about it at work and stuff, and people are like, oh yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, all right, you do that. And I just, for the first time, had a bunch of coworkers come to a contest that was on Saturday that I did very well at. And,
good.
And it was, I feel like there was a switch that flipped, and now, oh yeah, Wayne says he does comedy changed to oh, Wayne does comedy.
Right.
But what is it like when you're Amy T and you're going to work and people are like, yeah, she just headline shows all over the place on top of whatever your normal day job is?
Yeah, it's fun. I worked in peer and recovery support for individuals with dual diagnosis. So I worked in a treatment program and stuff. And I think social media is very helpful. My colleagues were part of my social media, so they would see me travel. But I also used comedy a lot to connect with the individuals that I supported. Because that humor, Barry, right? The shortest distance between two people is laughter. So if you can break them with using humor, you'll get them to open up, maybe laugh at some of the stuff that's going on in their life. Because I know it's heavy, it's hard, you're going through a lot, but let's make some lemonade out of this. And so being able to have that comedy background, I think was very helpful in my job. And I connected a lot with the individuals in that way. I think my personality was able to connect with them a lot. So, and then it's really cool. When like you say, when your colleagues will come in and see a show, it's yeah, you get to show off a little bit. This is what I look like up here, not, here.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. So I was Wayne was a lot different than I was when we first started, which was great because we were documenting it the whole time. So we wanted it to be a little bit different. Wayne was sending his sets to his coworkers to be like, "Hey, what do you guys think?" 2 months into comedy. To me, I told everybody around me, if anybody ever had accidentally found out that I did comedy, I was like, it's a year before you can see anything I've ever done, and you have to come to the show, and I'll let you know when that happens, because I was so embarrassed by myself. But which one were you?
I think I was a little bit of a show off because I think after that first show, something inside of me just lit up.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Confidence.
so, yeah, like all kinds of like everything in my life just made sense. And so I think I was a little bit of a show off because I felt like I knew I was pretty good, for my first 5 minutes. And it didn't take long where I got, 7 minutes or 10 minutes to open for like Nick DiPaolo and all those kind of people. And then I quickly rose up pretty fast. And like, my family owned businesses in Haverhill and stuff like that. So I had a pretty decent network of fan base. So, bookers did like the fact that I could put bodies in the seats too. So that didn't hurt.
Well, you mentioned Nick DiPaolo. What was, so obviously after you started your class, you started doing the open mics and stuff like that. Were there any, comedians that we would know now that came up with you in that era that, were, instrumental in what you did?
I'm sure you like Tony Moschetto, Kelly McFarland.
Yeah, Tony. We saw Tony about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Up at Seabrook. He's great.
Yeah, he's so good. So he was around. Like Kelly McFarland and Carolyn Plummer were probably early friends that I made right away.
Carolyn's one of the funniest people I've ever seen in my entire life, I think. In anything,
Yes,
she's
she's
hilarious.
Yeah. So yeah, there's still quite a few of them that I've made good connections with over the years, and then it keeps just growing, right? Like,
yeah.
It just keeps growing. Now, like there's people like, as a woman doing comedy, you're usually the only one on the show. Mm-hmm. So unless it's like a theme show, so you don't get to perform with your friends all the time. Like I don't get to perform with Carolyn with it. We're both headliners, so we don't always get to perform. But when we do, it's like it's a treat. It's a treat to be able to see each other and connect and watch, right? Like, not only be able to connect and like hang and shoot the shit, but also be able to see their performance and stuff.
Yeah, I hear, and this is only I hear because I definitely have not experienced it, but I hear that in comedy, obviously in the beginning, you're with all your friends and you're coming up the ladder together and you're always at the same things together at the same shows, but eventually comedy becomes more of a singular path if you get high enough on it because you're not doing the same shows as those people anymore. Either a lot of them drop off or, like you said, you become a headliner, and then how often do you get to be on the same show? So do you find like you can bring your own openers or you choose your own opener that you work with a lot, and that way you can kind of get that camaraderie that you used to have? Sometimes
like, if you're working with a booker and they book the show, like, who do you like to work with? You get like, I generally, and I mean this sincerely, pretty much love working with everybody. I don't have there's not one name that I could come up with that'd be like, no, I'm not doing a show with this individual. Like, I don't, we're all there to do a job. We're all there to have a good time. As long as you're easy to work with and you're just nice, I think that's good. What else did you ask? You asked something else, and I got off on that.
No, that sparked another question, and this is more of a personal question because you're awesome and I'm not, and I need help. So I've hosted. I'm hosting for a lot of places now. I'm doing a lot of hosting shows. I got a PA and all that, so that helps and all those kind of things. But I find that people like me about 25% less when I host. Why? I feel like comedy does not hit as good.
That was the most desperate I've ever heard you.
Hosting is an entirely different beast. I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate hosting, and I will avoid it at all costs. But
so hard.
A good host is really hard to come by, and it's an excellent thing to have in your back pocket.
I can feel it's a skill I'm learning, that's for sure. But man, it's like starting again. Yeah,
well, you're like the first one, and so like we don't have to listen to you. Like there's a whole rest of the show. Like you don't count. But a good host is the one that carries the show, right? You're the one that sets the tone. So if you're like in a mood because the audience is in a mood, and you show the audience that, they're gonna follow that energy. So you've got to elevate it. You got to come, like, whether there's 6 people or 600 people, you bring that same energy and that same excitement, whether it's a Tuesday night or a Saturday night, and you're just going to keep getting better. You keep doing it. Don't balk at it. Like, I will shy away from it. I will do it if I have to. And I wish I wouldn't shy away from it. But it's usually, it's the toughest spot to have. because you're the one you're setting the tone of the show from the minute you put your hands on the mic, and you're setting that pace. And I don't know, like, if you guys are, new enough that maybe you haven't experienced that, but when you have like a host that maybe is not doing well, and then you can feel, so then you can feel the energy of the show, right? And say they're only doing like a 4-person show, so they're the host, and they've got 2-3 people they're hosting for, and find your own style too. Like, you don't have to break it up and do a joke in between every comic. Maybe your set is your 7-minute set up front, and you just keep the enthusiasm rolling.
Yeah.
But you have like a 3-minute, you have a 3-minute bit in your back pocket just in case you need to bring the audience back or something, like, that, right?
That's definitely more my style. I started off because the booker that first had me going was like, just do half your set and I want you to sprinkle jokes throughout the rest of it. And then when I did that, I just felt unnatural. Like, I'm going up there and I'm like, you're sick of me already for me doing this to you. And there's lots of stops and starts that I need to earn in my set that I don't feel like I can do like that. And now I do my set kind of all up front, and then I'll tag people's jokes if I have to, or like you said, always have a joke that if someone completely eats shit in front of everybody, that you can help bring the people back. But yeah, it was so obviously in our circle, I'm used to seeing the host eat a lot of shit, and all of our friends, because that's just kind of what we do. You're liked a lot less. But I went to go see, on a rare occasion, Katrobis will host one of the shows that he does too, and he hosted at Gibbs Garage. And I told him, I was like, you mind if I go watch you, see how you do it? And it is a little eye-opening, like you said, to see somebody who really knows how to host. Because his stuff wasn't liked 20% less. It was liked how he always gets it. But he was a lot more animated to start the show. And I think you might be right. You really just got to set a tone of like, hey, get excited because we have to.
The audience is going to follow you.
Yeah.
So if you tell them to get excited, like, and not being like corny or anything, like, but yeah, you show that energy, they're going to kind of start to rise. They're going to try to kind of rise up to you. But then if you're like, if the audience is low, I just remember a comic recently, like, he wasn't having a good set, and you could just watch his energy go down. And then when he had to bring me up, he was like, oh, this comic came from Haverhill, Amy T. I'm like, you're an asshole. Like,
killing me.
You know what I mean? Like, don't set it up for me. You know what I mean? That, like, whatever. So I do appreciate a good host. And a lot of times, like, in this business, the host is like the least amount paid, and it's the most important job. So, like, if I book a show, I book like a feature act that is a good host, so that they get. I want to reward you with good money to do a good job, So I say stick with it, and it's a skill that, like, once you get it and you're comfortable with it, you're going to be a commodity that people are going to want. But make sure you get paid for it.
Yeah, I'm trying for sure, but sometimes I'm like, you shouldn't. You should just keep it, and I should definitely never talk about this again. But it's fun though, because the biggest thing that I've learned from hosting is to set up the next comic properly, because that's really the job of the show. And I feel so, even if like let's say I'm doing 10 minutes to open, and 6 of the minutes didn't go well in the beginning, but I got them at the end on a good joke, and it got the guy real good claps when he got into his set, and then he does good. I'm like, I did my job. Like, that's more what you think. Where when I do spots, I'm like, if it doesn't go perfectly, I beat myself into a wall.
We did a show recently. Anthony, we've been doing a lot of tandem shows together for the same booker. We did a show recently. Anthony hosted, and I was first up. And obviously we do this podcast. We've known each other for 14 years. So Anthony had a good, like, hey, I post this podcast, blah, 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 blah. Really nice introduction for me. I go up to him, I said, while I'm up, he goes to the next guy and goes, hey, what would you like me to say about you? Because they had never met before. And he goes, nothing. No, nothing. So all you can say is, hey, this guy's very funny, give it up for this guy. And then the guy goes up and shits on Anthony for not giving him a good intro and giving me a good intro. I was sitting in the back and I looked at him and I was like, what the fuck?
Dick.
Yeah, and that's the thankfulness, that's not a word, of a host is that. Because just all the time people are either going up and, like, the other day I was hosting a comedy contest, the one Wayne was in, And someone came up to me, he's like, he looks like your stepdad, but worse, or something like that. After I went up stage, I'm like, man, I'm here not getting laughs for you, just eating cold crowd shit. And then you guys just going up and shitting on me.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of I'm not a huge fan of the roast after where someone like shits on the host or shits on the comic before. Like, I'm not a huge fan of that. Like, it's not adding value. You're just.
It doesn't work a lot of the time too. I learned that. Man, I had what was the last one that didn't work? Oh yeah, Wayne. So at start, I like to. It's always Wayne. I like to shit on Wayne. I used to like to shit on Wayne after he goes up because we're so close. And then I realized that so the last time we were at Stark's Brewery, and I was hosting, and I brought Wayne up, and he did great. So when he got off stage, I said, "Give it up for Jason Statham if he found Gollum's One Ring." And I said that, and I thought it was hilarious because Gollum, Jason Statham, perfect combination. No one liked it. Complete silence, and they yelled at me, and then that was it.
That's the thing, right? Like, the audience doesn't know the two of your relationship.
Yep.
So you got to think about that. So it's a great little riff between you two, and Wayne probably got a kick out of it, but the rest of us aren't in on the joke, so we're gonna be like,
yep.
what the fuck? What a dick move that was to that guy.
It was. Yep. So they said just like that.
And I let them think it.
Yeah, he did.
I was like, I don't know that guy. I don't know what he's thinking about.
That guy's a dick. Yeah, no, that is a. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's funny. Anthony's been doing all these hosting shows. Where last year I took Mike Atrobus' hosting class, and I haven't done a single hosting show except I am. Was it next Friday?
Well, yeah, I was supposed to host the thing. I'm like, please, God, let Wayne do one. I can't. I want to just do a set. But that's going to be a good one. That's Bjork, right? Steve Bjork?
Steve Bjork, yeah, down in Providence.
Oh, love him.
He's great. He was one of the first, probably the first live comic I saw, like true comic, not like open mic comic, like real comic, go up and work out a joke in real time. He was at the Luna Theater. He goes up, he does this joke. It didn't go the way he wanted. He went, I'm going to do that again. He was just honest with us. He's like, I'm working this out. I'm going to try it again. And just as he said that, two people walked in. He goes, I'm telling this joke to you. And he redid the joke, and it was 100 times better. And then I saw him do it 3 months later, and it was like gold.
Polished, nice.
I love that.
Yeah, Steve's. This is why Steve is bad for comedy, right? This is the only reason why Steve is bad for comedy. Because if you meet him in the beginning of your career, you get a completely warped view of what headlining comedians a lot of the time are like to you. Because that guy's such an angel. Like I did the first time I did anything with him, he the room sucked. Everybody was dead, and I was because it was like it was at Winter Circle, so I was after him. Yeah. And I was like, man, sucks. Steve's about to, I thought he was going to be really good, and he's about to eat shit, isn't he? And he went up and absolutely destroyed the room, brought them all up, did all this stuff, and then sat on the balcony and had comics around them and started punching up all their stuff. And I was like, wow, people are really nice. And then I met other people.
Yeah.
They are not.
Steve's a gem.
Do you find that's actually a really good point, and I've kind of noticed this, having gotten to work with some more headliners recently. I find that the more tenured comics seem to be a lot more friendly than like I'll say like an open mic comic or just an opening act comic, like I'll say less tenured.
It's probably a lot of insecurity, I imagine.
Like I'm not saying like we're not friendly, but like I'm saying in general, I feel like the Steve Bjorks, Rodney Normans, Casey Crawfords, the Amy T's of the world are so much more friendly than the people that show up, do their 10, 15 minutes at the top of the show, and then go home to whatever.
I was just having this conversation. I was just having this conversation recently, and I wasn't sure if it was a generational thing. Like I'm Generation X, so I wasn't sure if like it's just diluted of like respect and just general like human to human nicety. Like I'm like, what is going on? Because like I felt like there was a lot of disrespect, a lot of dismissiveness. I was hosting a show, and I was just like, please, I've been doing this before you were born. Like, what the fuck, you know? And I'm just not sure if it's like generational, and we've diluted into like we just don't have like human to human contact interaction. I know like prior to a show, if I'm headlining, I'm in my head. And so I'm not going to do a lot of chatting with you before. I'm probably going to be in my head, going through my set. Afterwards, I'll talk to you. And so I don't know if that comes off. I've had a couple of comics I've talked to where they thought like I was standoffish, and it's just not. Like I can't hear you bouncing your jokes off of me when I'm trying to get ready to do 45, 50 minutes. Like, and I'm not trying, you know what I mean? And so sometimes like, I don't know if people are in the zone, or like, there's like a social anxiety to it.
I just think it's security versus insecurity. I really think that's what it comes down to. I think, why it seems generational, because I think later in life you also get more secure with yourself, and you're like, I don't need to be a dick. But especially for us in this stage, I feel like almost all of us probably think a lot of the time that we're not supposed to be where we are. We're not doing, like, our jokes aren't that good because we're new and all this kind of crap. And like me, whenever I like to make a mistake in my house and my wife calls me out on it, I like to tell her a mistake that she once made. It's just how I like to cover my tracks there. So I can see that newer comics, that's probably why they lash out so much, is because they're probably feeling shit about their stuff. Where all the fully tenured comics, like, you guys know you got good stuff. You know that it works. You've seen the machine go enough times. And I'm sure
it's a competitive industry, right? Like, it's a competitive business that we're in. Like, there's 4 spots on a show, in a full Saturday night show, Friday night show. There's 4 spots that we're all vying for. And a lot of times there's only one woman spot, so we're all vying for it. Like, once you let go of that ego and you don't care and you're just like, you're happy that everybody's winning and everybody gets the support. I think for me, like, I noticed more came. Like, once I got rid of that competitive ego of like, how come this person got this and I didn't? Sometimes it's like there's no rhyme or reason. It has nothing to do with talent. It was you were in the right space at the right time, and this person was like, oh shit, I got a show, in November. You want to do it? Yeah. Well, how did you get that show? I don't know. I was at the Winter Circle on a Tuesday night. That's all. It had nothing to do. So there's no rhyme or reason to this business, but it is very competitive.
I talk about that a lot on these shows. It is competitive, but I feel like if everybody was just a little more cooperative, it could be less competitive. Like I do my best to share every show I can. I miss some. Sometimes I scroll past and forget to hit, share, even if I don't type anything. But if we have more eyes on more shows and they fill up more, then there's going to be more shows. If those fill up, there's going to be more shows. And then eventually there's going to be more spots for more comics. And it's incredible with some of these shows that we're doing that a lot of comics that are even on the shows don't share the flyers.
Yeah,
let alone
got
flyers
other shows around, that's for sure.
And I wish everybody could just kind of get on the same page and say, hey, let's just make this a booming industry.
Yes.
It's so tough because I can, like, I have the ego that you're talking about that I don't want to have, where I like it just if you're trying to send tape to somewhere and then you're like, damn, these people never get back to me, and then you see someone that you're with in your scene and they get onto the show or something, even though like you said, it's random, they probably just saw them somewhere, there's still, I have to admit to the part of my brain that's like, fuck that guy. I can't stop that feeling. I wish I could. I gotta let it go.
Yeah, seriously, I'm gonna save you many, many years if the minute that you can intercept that, the more that's gonna come back to you. Mm-hmm. But the more you hold on to that, the more resistance you're gonna get. Just let it go, just because there's nothing you can do about it.
It feels so good to be spiteful, though, Amy. It feels so good.
Write about it. You write and you get better. You get to be a better comic.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I have a whole bit now that I love because it's called Bad Person, and I just keep changing. I go, I'm a bad person because of, and I have a joke about it. And I've been able to mine stuff like that. Like, I can go for a whole bit about how I don't want you to succeed. I only want to succeed. I think it's funny to. I thought in the beginning, because when we were doing the podcast in the beginning, we wanted to do this as a documentary. So I jumped into the analytics. I thought of comedy as much as I can. Like, I know you have to have a voice. So what is my voice supposed to be? And I always, in the beginning, my first thought was my voice should be the voice that's in everybody's back of their head that they won't admit to. The one that says, like, I want that spot, that spot. And then I realized that people hate you if you talk like that. So I quickly transitioned out of that.
It's a good bit, though.
It is a good bit, at least.
It is a good bit. Yep.
All right, well, I think we're getting to the end of this thing, Amy. So where can the people find you out in the world? We already talked about the website, but keep it going.
Yeah, so I think the next show is June 22nd. I'll be at Murphy's Tap Room up in Manchester, and then I get a couple of private gigs for Pride, and then I'll be down at the Castle Iron Brewery at the end of the month on the 29th in Boston. So yeah, summer usually slows down for comedy, but it doesn't seem to be, so that's good.
Oh, awesome. Well, make sure you guys all check it out. Like we said, experimentalcomedy.com. You said amytcomedian.com?
Yep. Either one will take you to my site, yeah.
Either one will take it. And, obviously, check out the shows. If you are open mic comedian, the best advice I can give you, because I am one as well, is if you want to get on shows or take the next step, go to shows. Go to someone like Amy shows. See how a real professional does it. And also learn how to be a professional yourself, because obviously you know what you're doing. But Amy, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Me, whenever I like to make a mistake in my house and my wife calls me out on it, I like to tell her a mistake that she once made.